Bismillah walhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ittaqa. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just recently we had a conversation about the famous Shaykh Muhammad Musa Nasr, and I was mentioning that he was one of the student teachers under Shaykh al-albaani, and he just passed away, rahimahullah, on his trip to make Umrah. And he was stopping, he had a car crash around the city of Tabuk, right outside the city of Tabuk, rahimahullah. So I thought it would be suitable to mention some of the student teachers under Shaykh al-albaani, because sometimes we forget, and I think this generation has forgotten what happened. Shaykh al-albaani, during his era, rahimahullah, was one of the major shuyukh of our time. He was a muhaddith, rahimahullah. At that time, there were people like Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh Muqbil, and Shaykh al-albaani. These were the biggest three that we knew at the time, here in the West. And so we all took a route to go study with them. A lot of times people went to Medina, or they went to Malaysia, or they went to other places to study as students, tulab al-ilm, at the Islamic universities. Azhar is pretty famous. But all those places are not really the traditional way of studying. The traditional way of studying is to go to the Shaykh's house, his neighborhood, his town. Get to know that Shaykh. Get invited to his halaqat, or sit in his public halaqat until you can get into those halaqat, and you grow and you learn and learn and learn different things. So this was the halaqah of Shaykh al-albaani. Some people went to Yemen for Shaykh Muqbil. Myself and others, I was one of the students of al-Albani. Now it's important to note, when we were here in the state, we would study from al-Albani through through the phone back in those days. We would have phone conversations through the Shaykh. We didn't have Twitter, we didn't have YouTube at that time. So we did it through the phone. So we didn't meet him. I never got to meet him. When I went to go meet him, he was already passed away, rahimahullah. So I was in Mauritania first, and then come back to the students, and I met these are the students of Shaykh al-albaani that I personally studied under. And these are the ones most people know, but they don't know about them the way we should. Now when you went to Albani's area, this is Jordan, that area there, and these people were the ones that got kicked out of what we call Jerusalem, or Philistine today, and that Syria area, that whole area where Jordan is today, the cousins of the Egyptians. In that area, the first thing you had to do before you could speak was memorize Qur'an. That was your first year, or 2 years, or 30 years. You got no further before you memorized the Qur'an. And then after that, you got to go through the Lughat al-Arabiyyah, those different things. And the whole time you could be learning fiqh, but that was it. Now what did Shaykh al-albaani produce? Shaykh Mashhur Salmaan, very famous scholar. He was the scribe. He was, we used to call him the mouse in the house. He's the one in Shaykh al-albaani's room, his office. He wrote everything down Shaykh al-albaani did. In fact, if you notice all the hadith books, or most of the hadith books that were produced with al-Albani, it says i'tana bihi Shaykh Mashhur Salmaan. He's the one that wrote them. Al-Albani dictated. Okay? That's something they didn't know. A lot of people don't know about Shaykh Mashhur al-Falastini. aDZeem al-Badawi, hafidhahullah. This was my main teacher, the one I memorized Qur'an directly under him every morning, reciting to him. Very serious, never played, hardly ever smiled. Most of these guys are big guys, big bakhm, linebacker type guys. But aDZeem al-Badawi, he's a little guy. And he was the top shaykh, he was the faqih. He was the faqih and the shaykh of all these other shuyukh. Okay? He was also the mufassir. The highest part you can get in Islam as a scholar is to become a mufassir. Because that means you have all the skills, and now you're explaining the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After aDZeem stayed with Shaykh al-albaani for so long till Shaykh al-albaani said, listen, Egypt needs you more than you need me. Don't come back to my halaqah anymore. Okay? And that was his ijazah to leave and go to Egypt. Hafidhahullah, he's still living. Then we have next Shaykh Salih Taha ibn Taha, more known as Abdus-salaam, rahimahullah. Now he's the reason which made me want to give this lecture. Abdus-salaam I met him time and time again. Him and Shaykh aDZeem al-Badawi were best friends. Okay? Now he got sick, and after he deteriorated, and then he finally passed away about a month ago. Now the thing you have to remember, or I want to get you guys to know about Abdus-salaam. Matter of fact, it's going to take another video. We'll talk about Abdus-salaam in our next video, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم.